Hello and welcome to Creating the Life You Love, How to Live a Spiritual Life in a 3D Reality. I'm your host, Valeria Bruno, and this is a space where you will find the tools for your personal and spiritual development, so you can live a fulfilled life in the magnificence of your being. And this is also a space where we can openly talk about science, spirituality, and even go beyond. My welcome guest today is Dr. Paola Ranova. Hello, Paola. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Valeria. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you. So I will introduce you to the audience by reading your bio. Paola Ranova is not her birth name. She's Paola Novais Ramos, and she has a bachelor and master degree in political science and a PhD in social sciences and comparative studies. Paola is also a professor of political theory and moral philosophy at the University of Brasilia. Born and raised in Brazil, Paola became an academic because she has always been passionate about the wonders of human nature, consciousness, self-development, and the soul. To fully pursue her passion for human nature, she studied and researched many cultures, ancient wisdom, and contemporary knowledge about who we are as human beings and what is our purpose. She is a certified body talk practitioner, a magnified healing instructor, and she is the creator of the cardinal method of life connection and the founder of Ranova Healing Center and Ranova Academy in Florida. Paula is also an author, and she has published 2 books, Your Cardinal Connections, which is available both in English and in Portuguese, and The Cardinal Method of Life Connection. So, Paola, this is a very nice bio that I'm seeing here. Before starting talking about the method you developed, I would like to ask you the process in your life which allowed you to be both an academic, so using also your left brain, and also a spiritual teacher. Can you please share with the audience?
Of course. Thank you for asking this because it's actually the core of our being that makes the decisions in our lives, or the social conditioning and the masks that we're forced to use, which allow us to adapt to society, but we are always afraid of being ourselves depending on the belief systems we grow up in, right? So depending on the culture, and allow me to be a little academic here because I do have a background in comparative cultures. So I do notice that our Western culture for the last 500 years has really put the rational mind in a pedestal, which is not a bad thing, unless you exclude other dimensions of our being. So human nature is not just the rational mind. It includes the rational mind, and it's something that I want people to pay attention to because we tend to fragment ourselves either in the intellectual or the emotional or the spiritual or the physical and exclude the other dimensions. So we may not care for our bodies if we're too spiritual, or not really want to be intellectuals if we're too spiritual. And the intellectual people discard emotions or discard the spirituality, right?
Yeah.
So what we want to be is a holistic human being. So I made a decision when I was 17 years old because I had a lot of what now I understand is clairvoyance. It's the expanded mind that quantum physics allows us to understand on a scientific level. It doesn't have to be a magical, mystical, superstitious kind of explanation anymore, right? Our
Yeah,
minds are
yeah,
expanded beyond the rational and the conscious aspect. But as a child, I was very sensitive. I loved nature and animals, and I was very sensitive to harsh human emotions, how people could be so cruel. And I grew up in a city called Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, which is the political center of the country. And I would see the children of politicians and of entrepreneurs and people who were making deals with the government. They were very, very tumultuous inside. They had very unhappy emotions, and they were self-destructive. And I didn't really understand, why are these kids so troubled, right? Because if you live in a political center, there's a lot of power struggles. And we don't understand how the soul reacts to that. So I would feel the wounded souls, that people were in a lot of pressure in a political center of a huge country like Brazil, and I wouldn't understand why that was happening. So when it was my turn to become an adult, right, at age 17, 18, I had to choose between being an artist, because I love illustrating. I love, the artistic realm. But I knew that if I went in that direction professionally, I would not be as balanced as I could be if I were to understand the world in a rational way, because I will already have that nature, that tendency to be connected to nature, artistic, emotional. But I wanted to understand the reason behind human pain. And I knew I didn't want to be a psychologist, because I knew that I could understand the human soul in a spiritual way, not a religious way, but a metaphysical way. As for myself, for my own personal development. In my professional life, I didn't want to be a caretaker. I believe in personal empowerment. And I wanted to understand rationally how the world worked without having a subjective opinion about it. Because it's very easy to just say, the world is evil, humanity is terrible. And that's just a subjective opinion, right? I wanted to understand the world with actual knowledge. So I went into the political science field because I was in a political center of the country. So that was a challenge for me to understand the soul behind the actions. What was the motivation, for people who have decision-making powers, and why were they so miserable? And their children were so miserable, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to understand that in a rational way, not in my own inner world and making assumptions. So that was kind of the beginning of my understanding of human nature in an academic world, in parallel to my spiritual development, which I thought would be just for myself. But then after I turned 35, life decided for me, right?
Yes,
That I
we
would
are
move
in
into
service,
teaching.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did I answer your question? Sometimes I talk.
Yes, yes. And so it was smooth for you. It was not a shift, a sudden shift, but you went in parallel. So
Yeah.
how it feels today to be recognized as a professional in the academy and as a teacher, a founder, a creator of a method? Do they see you in a strange way, or they do respect you? Because in Italy it's still something difficult to achieve.
That's a very good question, because in the beginning, my spiritual life was just for myself, right? So no one in the academic world knew that I was in parallel, and I really divided. I'm very systematic in my in conducting my life and my time. So I would dedicate 50% of my life to the academic world and 50% to my personal development with the metaphysical. And no one knew about that in the beginning. So I was 18 until I was 22, undergraduate, then the master's degree in political science, then the doctoral thesis, which was when I started understanding family constellations and traditional cultures, how they dealt with the soul, was when I was doing my PhD. I was 30 years old. And then that's when things started to merge a little bit. But I became a professor at age 31. And for 4 years, I was teaching political theory in parallel developing the Cardinal method. And I wasn't exhausted, because energy work does give you so much,
Yes,
higher vibrations. You have
yeah.
vitality with it. But I knew that I needed to make a choice. And I actually talked to the supervisor of the course, because I was a young professor, right? And I said, can I reduce my time to 20 hours instead of full time? Because I'm developing a soul healing method. And the women in the department all respected this immensely. And the men were quiet. They were not, I have never been bullied or disqualified or disrespected ever by my colleagues. On the contrary, everybody was respectful, but they were just saying, well, you need to kind of make a choice. And what happened was, my husband had a job opportunity in the United States. And I said, I can get a license from the University of Brasilia, and go to the US to research Native American wisdom about the soul. And this is going to be, again, I had the researcher mind, right? And this is going to be wonderful for me to merge these two bodies of knowledge, the philosophy, the moral philosophy, the Western body of knowledge about human nature, and the indigenous in an academic way. I thought about publishing books, and I did publish one single article, but then what happened was, when I got to Florida, I was introduced to the South Florida spiritual community, which had two systems that embraced me and the Cardinal Method, which are the body talk system and magnified healing. And this is spiritual science. It's energy science. It's not woo, out of the blue, inconsistent anything. They are very structured system. There is a metaphysical science that I think people really should get to know. And they're very high qualified people who are experts in this knowledge, right? Like astrology, for example, which is not woo either, in my opinion, as long as you look at it as a science.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I could either be a researcher in the libraries of Native American wisdoms. I wanted to duplicate my PhD methodology, which was comparative cultures. I compared the Inca Empire to a type of society in Brazil, indigenous, pre-Columbian, called the Tupinambás, who did not know political authority. So an empire, it's not even an empire if you think about it in Inca terms, but again, to use the Western terminology, I was comparing two very distinct realities, right? And I wanted to do this with indigenous Native American, with the Aztecs and the Hopis, which is a smaller society based in love, which is very alien to politics, right? We don't mention love in politics. In the 21st century, some people are mentioning it, but it's still taboo. It's still a very fragmented reality from the political theory reality. So I wanted to bring in that knowledge and that creativity, that kind of novelty into the political world. What about a society that is organized with the elements of love and that cherishes love, which is happens to a lot of indigenous cultures, not all of them. We can't be, fantasizing about the indigenous as if they were these beautiful angels. They're humans like us, and there are problems and there are wonders in every society, right? But again, I was going to be a researcher at the University of Miami, a postdoctoral researcher. But the South Florida spiritual community knew about my work because I was already developing the Cardinal Method in Brazil since 2010. And they said, we have another offer for you. Why don't you research how your method behaves hand in hand with our system? And that was a body talk system, and Sembio, which is Dr. Jenna Galipo's system as well. And I said, yes. I could choose to keep researching. I had been researching since I was 18. So that was a 15-year career, maybe. Or I could choose hands-on healing and research in practical ways how people reacted to the Cardinal Method. Because it's one thing to treat Brazilians in Brazil. Brazil is a very open culture. It is a multicultural country, right? The indigenous, the African, the European are all merged together. And there's openness of mind to that. But energy healing doesn't work unless your mind is willing and allowing, because the human mind is the strongest force there is. There is no way you can use crystals or any other energy healing system if the mind is not going to allow it. Your mind can block any reality. That's why we're not vulnerable to anything that our minds do not accept, embrace, and believe. So I said, yes, let's research in Florida, because Florida is the mecca of all cultures, right? It's like the UN here. We have people from Poland, from many, many countries, many cultures. And I was very surprised, I will tell you, Valeria, because I really did not expect, I had the skeptical mind of the researcher. And I thought, people are not going to, have results, soul healing results with a method that is indigenous, that is it also inspired in an African culture, also native European. So this is not going to be something that's going to work with other cultures. But I was extremely surprised, because only 100% of the time, and I'm telling you, this is true, in all kinds of sessions that I offered, The willing people, regardless of culture, had incredibly powerful results. There are people who are not willing and they don't want the healing, they don't believe it, they have their defense mechanisms. It's not going to work for them, but it's not cultural. That was the aha moment for me, you know? It's a universal of humanity to receive soul healing. And it's not the culture that's going to block the person, it is the individual mindset. So that was my journey. So it wasn't tumultuous in the beginning when I chose to be an academic, because I was very consciously separating both worlds in parallel. But when they started to merge, because life brought me to this flow, I had to make a decision. Am I going to hold on to the titles of the academic, or am I going to start a new life from scratch and become an energy healing professional that needs to start from the very, very beginning and get all the new certifications and understand the behavior of clients, not students,
Yeah.
and develop this love center in the heart, which was not something that academics are encouraged to do. We are, as academics and professionals in this field, we are encouraged to love knowledge and take care of knowledge. And this is correct. We cannot allow, because of a loving heart, we cannot allow distortions in knowledge and science, right?
Yeah.
But awakening the heart is something that is necessary when we're treating people with emotional problems. So that was the greatest short circuit for me. It's not a linear logical process. It's logical in a soul level, but not in a rational level.
Yeah.
So
I was very attracted by your cardinal method of life connection for two reasons. One, because when I heard you the first time, you were saying that he's promoting not only soul healing, but consciousness expansion, but especially the joy of life. That is something that still we do not experience very often. We are too busy, too worried. So this was the first reason, the joy of life. The second one is because with this method, you can heal the past, the present, and the future. So it's something that really blew up my mind. And I would like for you to describe this method to the audience because it's structured on four main pillars. So if you can describe these four pillars and the process.
absolutely. So the cardinal, it's based in my individual passions that make so much sense because I believe they're universals for humanity, though they started in different cultures, right? So in the beginning of the cardinal method, I didn't even know at age 14 when I started studying Greek philosophy and yoga at the same time. You can see that my mind is really about comparing and bringing the, you know, the common denominator in different realities, that I was being prepared to create the cardinal method. That's what was happening. So we are individuals and we have areas of life that are present in our physical bodies, which are called the chakras, right? So this is part of Hindu wisdom. And there are other systems, cultural systems, that have chakra systems. Chakras are energy centers in the body. So the Tibetan and, you know, there are other types of medicine that talk about 5 chakras, but the Hindu chakra system has this reference that we have 21 chakras and 7 major ones in our bodies, in our torsos, the spinal column and the head. So this is part of our individual consciousness and how we connect and relate to the world. So the Hindu chakra system brings us our survival ideas and our survival abilities with the root chakra. When we are okay with our survival, we are allowed, we have enough energy for pleasure, right? So we travel up to the sacral chakra, because only when we have guaranteed survival can we enjoy life, right?
Yeah.
And when we enjoy life, what's next? So as I understood the Hindu chakra system, and we talk about consciousness expansion, this is like life is always abundantly expanding towards more and more and more. But our belief systems make our lives really small. So some people are just in survival mode. They're in the root chakra level. right? Worrying for survival, not allowing themselves enough pleasure because there is no time for self-care. So a lot of people are in the empty cup syndrome because they give, and then they don't refill their cups, and they don't have energy to keep giving. And then there's a vicious cycle. So I'm noticing that the Cardinal Method addresses that kind of thing. What level of consciousness do you need more healing or alignment or balance? Today, people talk about healing as not even a very good word because it implies that something is off. So we talk
Yes.
about alignment
Yeah.
and balance better than healing. But anyway, so once you start enjoying life, you have enough energy, what do you do next? That's the solar plexus level, which is personal power, contributing to society with a sense of individuality. And that's where your ego can play a healthy role. So I don't believe that the ego is a demon that we have to battle and
Yeah, neither
dissolve.
do
It
I.
is just
Yes,
a human
yes, I
trait,
agree.
right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
controlling ego is not a good trait. The controlling ego means we're stressed and hurt. But when the ego is balanced, it means we're adults and we take responsibility for life and for ourselves, and also to help the world and contribute. Then we travel up to the heart, which is the loving aspect, right? Which is how we connect to other humans and also to other beings like nature, animals, plants, crystals, any kind of living entity. Then we travel to the throat, which is the center of truth, which is something that we deal a lot with. Because if we don't live from our truths and if we don't verbalize what we want, we create a far from ideal life. So if people keep complaining, they're reaffirming what they don't want. They're focusing on what they don't want. They're using their personal power of speech to create more pain. It's a vicious circle. So when we say healing past, present, and future, it has to do with stop repeating past pain. Stop reaffirming what you don't want because you're contaminating your present moment with past pain. And in the present moment, you're creating your future with what you don't want to create, right? So again, it's this kind of consciousness that we work with. And traveling up to the third eye chakra, that's our thought patterns. So again, we have spoken words and thought words. And our reality in a physical way is created by our thoughts, and our thoughts create our emotions. Our emotions create vibrations, and our vibrations will emanate an energy that will activate the law of attraction. So today, this can be explained scientifically. And we have to be very mindful of our thoughts because I will tell you, I would say 95% of the success of any energy healing session that you receive or meditation or whatever it is that you do to create more balance is in your mindset. So if you go to a spa session for an hour, a massage, and then you relax and then you leave and you start worrying, you just threw everything down the drain because you're not creating the new mindset. You are going back to your old habits. We have addictions, thought addictions to pain and suffering and making our life small. So 95% of the work is us doing every day and really being mindful of our mindset and keeping a pure mind and making affirmations that will ultimately change our identity level, which leads us to the crown chakra, which is the center of spirituality, but not in a religious way. Spirituality in the Cardinal Method is infinite spiritual abundance, meaning everything is available for you and ready to be in your life as long as you allow it. And we have a lot of self-permission issues. We don't allow ourselves to be happy, which now leads us to the question, why? And the answer that I found in the Cardinal Method is a lot of us are loyal to the pain of our ancestors. So again, we just traveled through the chakra system, but now I'm coming to the second pillar of, they're not in order, but the constellations come through because why on earth are we so addicted to suffering? If it's not our individual experience, we have imprints in our DNA, and we have inherited cells from our ancestors that are not just biological matter. It's also soul content. So if our great grandparents and our grandparents have gone through turmoil and pain, we have that kind of programming in our cells unconsciously. This is on a cellular level.
Yes, yes.
So it's one of the reasons why the cover of my book, it's okay to show it?
Sure, sure.
It's a cell, a human cell, okay? So we are working on a cellular level because we have inherited a lot of all the stories and the experiences of our ancestors. And if they have passed away in pain, it still lingers in the life of the descendants. And it's very common in family constellations for us to see the granddaughter repeating the same story that her grandmother has lived, and it's maybe not even an official story. That's another thing that needs healing.
Yeah, yeah,
Because families tend to have a lot of shame and secrets. So our cells know the true story, but the official story that is told to us is not true at all. So I'll give you a quick example.
yeah.
This girl heard for her whole life, the story was that her great grandfather died of appendicitis. And then her life was not going well. A lot of things were in turmoil. And when you investigate that, because we have the protocols and the tools and the training to do this energetically, the story that came up was it's not true that he died from appendicitis. He was actually poisoned and murdered, right? And we can see that. We know the story energetically. This is not a woo-woo thing. And once you find out the truth, what happens is alignment, because people live in short circuit between family secrets and the truth. So once you align the truth and tell the true story, your cells start behaving differently. And your life improves because you have healed an ancestral level of your consciousness. So that's why the cardinal method includes family constellations too. What is the blockage to abundance? What is the blockage to health and well-being and all the good things in the world? Often it's family loyalty, unconscious, deep unconscious family loyalty. Other times it's a conscious choice to be stubborn and be unhappy because people are just addicted on a thought level
Yes,
to pain and to complaining, and that's a personal choice. That's the individual level of consciousness. But when you address the structure level, the family, the ancestral level, so much can change in a person's life, which is beautiful, right? So the indigenous wisdom that is included in the cardinal method is the truth, meaning the truth is the greatest soul healer. Silence is the greatest soul healer, conscious silence, because once you get what the truth is, you don't need to keep talking about the things that don't serve you, right? So there's a lot of wisdom in indigenous societies that we honor silence, conscious silence, as a healing for the soul, and we stop perpetuating negativity with our speech and thoughts. And the truth is the greatest healer and information transmitting. That's why we use the crystals. So the crystals are part of indigenous wisdom. What the Native Americans used to say is crystals bring forth the truth, heal, and protect at the same time. So for them, the word truth, the word healing, and the word protection are the same word. It's a polysemic culture, right? The same term
yes,
can mean a lot of different things. So truth, healing, and protection to them is the same energy. And I said, this is lovely, but I want to test this. I'm not going to believe everything that is said to me in literature. It could be superstition. And I just need to test this. So I started using crystals as energy, associating crystals with family constellation work. I had an okay from my two instructors when I was taking the constellation instructor course, right, to become certified. And what happened was that with the presence of crystals, the information came through much more accurately, faster, with less drama, not as much intensity, emotional intensity. And I thought there's something to this. And this is not just a religious practice of the indigenous. There's science behind this. And there are some quantum physics professionals and academics and researchers that will validate a lot of indigenous wisdoms as science today, in today's day and age, right? So in the cardinal method, what I did with my research was I investigated the internal geometry of the stones, the molecular level, and the colors, which are known in chromotherapy and other metaphysical studies to be emotional healers, right? Depending on the vibrational frequency of a color, it can address a specific level of emotion and soul. So I know that this can be measured scientifically for those of us who are, as myself, who are in need of a scientific explanation in a Western perspective. So what started happening was that I started understanding the crystal systems and how specific geometries align specific levels of consciousness and specific emotions. So that was actually a structured system that became the cardinal method. So I said, I need to test this. So I created focus groups to test the practices. And once I had enough data and time of research, I decided to publish the first book, which is Your Cardinal Connections. And the people were, they love the book. They say it's a short, simple book. It's for the lay people. It's not an academic book at all. And I had to really go bash my ego to pieces, because my first book was my PhD thesis, which is very technical. And, you know, I had a lot of pride in that, and I still do. But I knew that I needed to surrender to a different kind of writing that would not abandon my scientific background, but it needed to be a different language for lay people to understand and to help themselves. Because what's the point of knowing all that theory, all that monumental theory, if I'm standing in an ivory tower and only sharing this with 6 people, right? So I think we have a heart mission to spread knowledge, because in my opinion, knowledge is love. Yeah. Love for knowledge. And the more we dedicate ourselves to knowledge, it's our hearts impelling us and propelling us to love knowledge, which is something the world needs. So the more we share high quality knowledge, the more we help humanity, right? Not just on a theoretical level. I believe we need to have good high quality theory, because that will give us the basic concepts to think from. Also practice. But theory and practice on their own are not enough. I know people who practice, who pray. They you know, they do the malas and they pray 400 and I don't know how many times every day, and their lives are still stuck because the practice is not enough. We need the alchemy, the transformation, which comes from your different mindset. So aligning high quality theory with high quality practices and a personal choice to choose abundance instead of scarcity, because in the end of the day, that's what it adds up to, then you create an abundant, beautiful life. Then you allow all the beautiful things that life has to give you to fully manifest. Otherwise, they are just potential. Theory on its own and practice on its own are just potentials. If you don't act on it and if we don't act on it and change our behavior, starting with taking care of our mindsets, we will not be able to change our lives. So I thought that was the reason why I needed to write the first book. The second book, The Cardinal Method of Life Connection, is more technical. It explains the whole method. It's larger. I'll show you. Yeah, it's larger. It's still an introduction. It's written in simple language too, but it explains the science behind and the theory behind the cardinal method. And the Western pillar, right? So we have the Hindu chakra system, the family constellations, the indigenous wisdom, which is our connection to nature. It's not just about crystals, but right now the cardinal method will turn 10 years old in December. So I'm still only introducing the crystals to the general public, but there's also the power of animals, the power of plants, and also the example of human beings who have developed unconditional love in their hearts. And the church calls them saints, right? And other religions call them masters. So we have some human beings who are examples of unconditional love that are also part of the method that will be, you know, unfolding and developing in the future.
Yes, what I would like to share with the audience is that you give every month 3 sessions, and I was lucky enough to find you and to participate to one of that. So I want to share my experience. I was aware of family constellations, but I've never done it. So I found myself in a new process that I didn't know. So I was not conditioned by my mind. And every month, Paola decides about a theme, something to solve. And practically what happened is that even if the theme was not really belonging to me, but I could see my sister life, my mother life, and my grandmother life passing through my mind. In few minutes, I just saw all of their lives, something that I didn't even know. I know my sister very well, but there were some personal experiences that I did not know. And this was a profound change in me too. And also, when I was talking later on with my sister, she said, in these days I feel better, I feel relieved. Of what? I don't know, but I feel relieved. So it's really a profound process. And I felt for my experience that is not only ancestral, but also my inner child was very happy. So there is a role also of the inner child in the process.
The inner child healing is important because the inner child is the aspect of our psyches. I talked a little bit about the ego, but not the inner child, because the inner child is the one who feels the joy of life, right? And most of us live in wounded inner child mode. Hence, we don't experience the joy of life very often.
Yeah.
So what the Cardinal Method wants to do, and crystals are very joyful, they're very joyful energy. Aside from being powerful energy healing tools for the soul, they bring the joy of life because they release the soul wounds, right? So the wounded inner child, what happens is that we are all wounded. It's part of the human experience. Between ages 4 and 7, maybe something specific happened. Maybe it's a lifetime period of sequential painful experiences that will create or crystallize a specific type of wound in each person's soul, individual soul. So what the inner child does, because the inner child does not have the cognitive mind developed yet, it doesn't really discern what we call in the Cardinal Method divine proportion. This is something that Western thought, the Western pillar of the Cardinal Method brings to the picture, which is divine proportion. Leonardo da Vinci, right? He is a huge influence in the Cardinal Method when it comes to proportion of the body areas, where pain is in the body, and also how we can discern the proportion of our life experiences. So children, what they do, because they don't have the cognitive mind discernment, is that specific pain becomes a generalization and a framework to see life through those lenses. So if the inner child wound is abandonment, that is crystallized emotionally, and the cognitive mind will quick start about at age 7, when the cognitive mind is installed. It will, from that content of pain, it will work to create generalizations and create confirmations of that pain, because the children will create generalizations in the sense that they will say, life creates pain, everybody will abandon me. So maybe a parent has abandoned the person, then one person did this, but everybody's going to do this to me now. So children amplify emotional pain, they generalize it, and they see the world through those lenses. So inner child healing, and there's actually an inner child practice in the book, Your Cardinal Connections, that you can do every day. I personally do this every week. I go back to the system that I developed for maintenance, right? Because I know that we all need to deal with our things. So the inner child healing is about bringing things back to the proper proportion, right? So that we don't amplify our emotions, so that we bring things to the level that they exist, and so that we can activate our inner adult to take care of our life. So if the inner child is ruling a person's life, a lot of non-ideal choices may happen. You may choose a career that will make you unhappy because you're confirming that limiting belief from your inner child. You may choose the non-ideal partner because maybe you saw your parents fighting all the time, so you're just going to repeat the pain you've experienced. And what is consciousness expansion if not living different experiences instead of the painful vicious circle of your childhood pain? That's exactly what we do with inner child healing. And in the constellation processes, we've been doing these monthly free constellations to support people through COVID, right? But a lot of people have been asking to have their personal constellations done online. We've been doing that for 5 years presently. But the online process works so well. You're living proof of that. You were in one of those processes. So, and when we do personal constellations for a person to have his or her own story, we're going to have a smaller scenario, and people who represent in a constellation, as you said, you just watched it and you had that experience. But when you live that role, you'll be healing your whole system by default. It's a mirror image. We don't have very original, painful life scripts. Life's creativity and originality is in each person's individual experience from joy of life, not from pain. So painful life scripts tend to be very, very similar and common. That's why you can feel the resonance of a stranger's story in your family, because
Yeah.
pain is not very creative. So we want to release the pain and become joyful and create a new life from this new perspective.
Yeah, that is what everyone would like to achieve in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Paola, you have another course which I find very interesting, that is human nature, because you can describe in a different way spirit and soul, and also the three principles of the soul. Can you please talk about, because I find it extremely interesting.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you for asking, because I've been, a researcher of human nature maybe since age 14, and then it became my academic career. And I've always been fascinated by human nature. In political theory and moral philosophy, there's always an aspect of human nature and a description of the individual human before you develop social theories and political theories. But I was always very fascinated by the human nature perspective of different authors. And when I dove into the energy healing career, I felt that I needed to merge both. I can't just be on energy healing. I need to also be in the theory and the intellectual aspect. I think we all need to develop all the areas of our lives, right?
Yeah.
So I created the intellectual pillar of the Cardinal Method of the Course of Human Nature. And because I founded my own academy, I was not disrespecting the university canons. Because when you're a professor in a university, you can't just be doing things at the top of your head because you
Yes.
like it, right?
Yeah.
But what made sense in my life, and I decided to create my own healing center, my own research academy, and the theory behind everything that I do. I give monthly live sessions in A Course in Human Nature that have three pillars of the individual soul. So there are two things I should maybe explain here. We have a collective soul, the structural level of our existence, that is our family and our culture, and we have an individual soul. So the collective soul has three principles, and the individual soul has three principles. The three principles of the collective soul are hierarchy, balance, and belonging. So that's how family constellations work from. That's the perspective of the collective soul. Your parents are big and you are small. Your grandparents are bigger and you are smaller. So if we don't respect our parents and grandparents on a soul level, your life is not going to work that wonderfully. So when you honor your parents, and this is not religious, this
Yeah.
runs across many cultures with
This is
different religions.
wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you honor and thank your parents for your life flows. The more you battle your parents' personality and the more you are stuck in inner child mode, mad at your parents for whatever it is that they've done to you. And I know that people have gone through many painful experiences. Some people have had very terrible lives. I do honor and understand that. But if you want to change your life, you need to heal it and go beyond it and see how the life that has been given to you can be bigger than your pain. But this requires individual healing. What I'm saying is that the collective soul we belong to has the hierarchy principle, the belonging principle, which is everybody belongs to the family. And there are many hidden people in our family systems. For example, if a grandparent has had a parallel family we're unaware of consciously, but our cells know, right? So that it may still, we may engage in triangular relationships unconsciously because that is in our system without our knowing, right? So belonging means everybody should be included, and there's a lot of exclusion in family systems. That's why some people's lives are so difficult and there are so many challenges, right? And the balance principle means Parents give 100% to their children, and children receive 100% from parents. So the people who are adults and that are emotional caretakers of their parents, maybe a woman, doesn't allow herself to she wants to have a family of her own and get married and have kids and a dog, but she won't give herself permission because her mother has a very childish personality. So she prefers to be the emotional caretaker of the mother instead of having her own family. Unconsciously, that's winning the game. Consciously, she wants something. Unconsciously, she doesn't allow herself.
Yes, that was the problem in my family actually during that
Oh, I didn't even know that. Really?
session. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So this is a pretty common life script. And people, that's the thing. If you want to heal your soul, you can live your own individual, unique life sacred path. But if you are entangled, that's the term in constellations, in your family system and your family pain, you don't give yourself permission to live the life you were born to live. So you have the potential and you have the desire, but you don't follow through because there is this energy holding you back. So that's the collective soul we belong to. We are born in families and cultures that I call the structure level of existence of the cardinal method. And if that structure is eroding, you will not be able to expand into your individuality or your spirituality, right? So a lot of people who disqualify spirituality, they're dealing with past pain from their families without realizing it. It's too much family loyalty.
Yeah.
And the ego and the inner child are going to create the most sophisticated kinds of justifications not to engage in a spiritual life. And a spiritual life is not a religious life. A spiritual life is just transcending matter and knowing that infinite abundance is possible and that you can always have different life experiences and that you can live in health, well-being, and the joy of life if you so choose. Because there are a lot of people who choose other life paths, which is beautiful. Everybody has their own rhythm. And one of the things that most annoys me in my life is imposed help or imposed spirituality. People need to awaken within and they have their own rhythm and timing. And a lot of people may awaken a little bit, move forward, take a few steps, and then they backlash because it's too much. It's too much change and they're too addicted to their old habits. And we need to respect that. It's an organic process, So imposed spirituality, imposed help is the opposite of what I believe in. And it's the opposite of life flow, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I like your tools so much because what I had in mind with this retreat, it was just tools for personal and spiritual development that, of course, I split because you never know who is listening to you, but for me it's the same. The more you progress personally, you open to spirituality and vice versa. So it's just one process. So having just one tool, it's very powerful. Paola, I have a question. It's just a curiosity. Do you think that all this information, because of course there is also channeling in what you received, is related to being born in Brazil that has one of the biggest veins of crystals? Do you think you felt the energy? Of course, crystals are loaded with information. So for you, just being born in Brazil, do you feel that was important for you?
I absolutely feel it was important because where I was born, actually in Brazil, it's a clear quartz. Let me show you what clear quartz is for the people who are not familiar. So it's a clear quartz shield in the central area of Brazil, and Brasilia is right in the middle, the city of where I was born. So I absolutely believe it was, everything about the cardinal method is geometry and perfect, accurate location. It's just so accurate because crystals' internal geometries lead to this, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe that it's the reason why I was born in Brazil for, to bring this method to the world has to do with the natural resources and the openness of the Brazilian culture.
Okay.
Though I come from my father is an intellectual, and I come from a family that really encourages a scientific thought and intellectual thought. And I lived in the United States when I was a young child, and I was encouraged to read and get all that, intellectual information. So it's the alignment of the instinctive natural forces and the spirituality of nature,
Yes.
and then developing and bringing it to the world in a different language, right? So that more people could have access to it. But I absolutely 100% believe that the more we develop our intellectual minds, the mind becomes sophisticated so that it can surrender to a more complex and sophisticated existence, which is spirituality. People need to understand this.
Yeah.
The intellectual mind can only do so much. It has a threshold. And the infinity of knowledge included in science is when you align the intellectual structure with a spiritual vibration. So this is definitely something I believe.
Yes, and so it's through the crystal that you are holding that you are going to provide an experience to the audience.
Yeah, so this is a clear quartz crystal. So there, thousands, infinite possibilities of crystal combinations in the world. It's a very, very broad world, right, of crystals. But if you had to choose one crystal to start with, I would say choose clear quartz. Amethyst, which I see behind you, is amazing too, because amethyst transmutes negativity into love. It's beautiful. And it's a great crystal to have. But for your personal use, I would say have a clear quartz crystal. And I'm sure that not everybody has a clear quartz nearby. It doesn't really matter, because the big thing about consciousness expansion and an expanded mind is that the blueprint is here. So if you just visualize the crystal, you will get the benefits of the stone. What clear quartz does is that it allows you to surrender to what you've always been called to, which is to accept and live spirituality. Because I know people who are in your retreat have this urge, have this soul calling, but maybe they don't give themselves permission enough, right? It's just a teeny bit. So what clear quartz will do is align your rational mind with spirituality without conflict, without dualism. Because matter is not separated from energy or spirit either. Matter is just a denser manifestation of energy and spirituality and consciousness, right? So clear quartz does this connection, it integrates all levels of consciousness. The internal geometry of the stone molecularly is an ascending spiral. So it creates a vortex of ascension and expansion. What it also does, and this is the beauty of this, is it brings us to 0 point field, meaning if we go even to Christian or Western religious metaphors and symbols, the Big Bang, right? In the beginning, there was the void, and then light, there was light. So this crystal there is light. It's enlightenment of the mind, so that you can start fresh every day. So when you wake up, you can think any thought, you have free will. But if you're aligned with the higher light, with what we call the higher self, or your spiritual self, your eternal self, which is unconditional love for yourself and all beings, you can start a new life every single day. You don't repeat the past pain of your ancestors. You don't repeat the past pain of your inner child. For those who believe in past lives, for constellations, past lives are the lives of the ancestors. But there are other spiritual streams of thought that talk about past lives, the individual soul reincarnating. Whatever your belief system is, it doesn't really matter, because what this crystal is going to do is bring you peace to connect with your higher self and be guided by your higher self. So if you can all, regardless of having a crystal in your hand, just close your eyes and picture the clear quartz. If you have it, wonderful. Place it where your thymus is, above your heart. And if you don't, just place both hands here and take a deep breath. Your thymus is the gland of happiness, right? We talk about the joy of life. It's structured, lasting happiness that comes from being connected to your individual, unique, sacred path. So we are releasing the weight of the past and taking the strength. The same energy that has been a weight on your shoulders can become strength for you to move forward. So when we connect to our ancestors and thank them for our lives, through our parents, life has been given to us. Biological, adopted, every parent who has contributed to your present moment existence has allowed life to flow through him or her. And this is all that matters starting now. It's the life that has been given to you. And all the pain has become strength. It has made your ancestors strong, not weak. Your parents have done their best and given you life. And today, here you are, beautiful and brilliant and breathing and awakened to the best of life starting now. So, appreciation, deep appreciation for your parents and all your ancestors. Picturing your father behind you on your right side and your mother behind you on your left side. Your father places his right hand on your right shoulder and your mother her left hand on your left shoulder. Behind them, there are thousands of ancestors from both family systems. And your parents are the bow, you are the arrow, and they bless you as you start walking one leg before the other, two legs, two parents, two family systems, one sacred path of joy and unconditional love, and fulfilling your life mission with all your vibrant life energy, all your potential, replenishing yourself with joy and life connection so that you fulfill your cup every day and you can give to others with what overflows. So now place the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, taking the strength from source, the higher light above us all, the central sun, which is exactly the energy of clear quartz. And breathing down, connecting as you breathe out, connect the last little part of your spine, the coccyx, to the center of the earth. Imagine roots coming down from the center of your feet, from both soles of your feet and your coccyx. So 3 roots, a triangular geometry of stability, reaching down to the center of the earth, embracing a huge crystal, a diamond that resides in the center of the earth. Breathing in, up to source, to the central sun, through your crown chakra, and breathing down to the center of the earth. And now imagine a huge, beautiful, threefold light, pink, gold, and blue inside your heart. It's called the threefold flame: divine love, divine wisdom, and divine power. Breathing deeply. And opening your eyes.
Thank you, really.
Thank you.
After every process, I need to ground a little bit more.
So in A Course in Human Nature, you were mentioning the Course in Human Nature. I teach, we have 3 years, it's a 3-year curriculum because I love teaching, right? So every month I teach a session. The first pillar, the first 12 sessions were in 2018 and 19 about divine wisdom. The second, which is going to end this year, the last session of the second pillar, divine love, is going to be on November 4th. And the power pillar is going to start in December. So it's an in-depth connection with what we just did.
Yes, and also you have a course on chakra, on crystals. So you can teach about each crystal, the qualities. So there is a lot to find in your websites.
Yeah.
And so, Paola, I know that you have a free gift for the audience. Could you talk about it?
Yeah, so we have the book, Your Cardinal Connections, is the book, right? So when I launched it, people said, we need an audio version, we need a video version. So what I did was create a course based on the book that goes beyond the book. And I chat with you, I read the chapters, and I pinpoint the most important information. And I also create soul exercises. So there's the theory and there's the practice that's not in the book, and a list of crystals that are beyond the crystals that are in the book as well. So it's called the Supercharged Your Cardinal Connections course. And it's available in our website as a course, as an energy healing course for people to purchase. But for your audience, for the people in this retreat, we want to give this as a gift. And you have a time frame to claim it so that you can get familiar with what the book is all about. It's the introduction to the Cardinal method, but because it's simple, it doesn't mean it's not deep. It really, you're in for a ride. So if you want to embrace this and create change in your life, it has a lot of options and tools there for you in the course. And it's our gift to the community as a thank you for having us here, because I'm really, really honored to be part of this.
Thank you, me too. And I would like to leave one of your messages to the audience, that theory moves a lot of energy and alchemizes the DNA. So it's not just talking, not just practicing, as you were saying before, but having this nice theory behind. It's really helpful for us. So thank you, Paola. It has been really a pleasure, and I'm positive that the audience enjoyed all this information that you provide. So thank you very much again.
Thank you so much. It was a beautiful experience, and I'm very, very honored. Thank you again.
Okay, so I will say bye-bye to the audience, and we will see each other in the next interview. Bye-bye.